Welcome to Smiling Through the Tears. We're so excited to have a special guest tonight, Trisha. Trisha's going to be with us tonight, and I just wanted to tell the listeners thank you so much for joining us. And I want Trish to know that I appreciate your willingness to be candid and vulnerable, sharing your story about the trenches of dealing with drug addiction. I want you to know how much I appreciate you and admire the boldness of sharing with us this evening. I believe that you're going to help so many people that are dealing with the same things that you did, and you're going to give them hope that there's a way out and there's a life after addiction. You are one of the bravest, strongest women to be able to overcome what most are unable to overcome, and many probably thought would be the death of you. Trish is going to take us on a journey of the life and the mind of a drug addict. So again, thank you so much for your courage in doing this. And I know it's not easy going down memory lane with these events that impacted your life in so many ways that many would never have the mental capacity to comprehend. So thank you so much, Trish. Let's start with your childhood. What was your childhood like?
My childhood was pretty normal. Both parents worked at Packard. I had a brother and a half brother. It was pretty much your basic childhood growing up. Loving mom, loving dad. Me and my brother were pretty much inseparable growing up. So it was pretty amazing, actually.
And how would you describe yourself as a kid? Were you a good kid? Were you always in trouble?
I was a pretty good kid. I was one of those little girls that pretty much stayed in her own little world with everything that I did. Always singing, dancing around, playing with animals, just your basic.
What do you think caused you to start rebellion in your life?
It started when my parents actually got divorced. I wasn't really sure how to handle it. I know now, of course, I didn't handle it the right way, but as a 9-year-old and your life is slowly getting torn apart and everything just completely changes, it's kind of hard to grasp, especially at that young age. Again, me and my brother were always together around. I kind of followed him because I didn't really know what to do.
What did you start with? Did you start with hard drugs? Did you start with alcohol? Did you start with marijuana? Like, what did it look like from the beginning?
So I was about 12 when I first ever got drunk. Mom and stepdad went out of town, older brother, older friends, threw a party. So it kind of started from there. And then each year it kind of progressed to a little bit more. I was always drinking at bonfires, and it slowly turned into weed. And once that really didn't do anything and other things were around, like the pills, curiosity. Like they say, curiosity killed the cat. It definitely did. I just always wanted to try. I don't know. It wasn't so much peer pressure, not even wanting to be part of the in crowd. I just wanted to not feel. And once I didn't feel anything no more, it became my life.
So basically, you were just trying to numb your feelings because it was better to not feel anything than to feel the hurt that you were feeling.
In every aspect, it's easier not to feel. So, again, like I said, this started when my parents got divorced. It was a rough divorce. So, between my mom and my dad, every time I was mainly with my dad, and my dad was my hero. He was my best friend. But it was so negative when I was with him. If he was not happy, nobody was happy. So I was the one that heard all the bad things about my mom, or eventually my brother stopped going up there, so I heard all the bad about him. So when I did go up there, because I just didn't not want to see my dad, so it was just easier to continue numbing and sit there and listen than be sober and listen to it all.
That's understandable. So do you think that, in your opinion, choosing the right friends has a impact on the decisions you make. And if you have some young listeners out there, what would your advice be to them on the choice of friends that they have?
Absolutely. I had great friends growing up in elementary and halfway through high school. When I started, it wasn't even so much when I started smoking weed or even drinking, because of course most of them did it. When I started doing the pills and stuff, that's when I slowly separated myself from them and they separated from me. So we lost contact for many, many years. I actually didn't start talking to some of them until I got sober. So even if you think your friends are kind of boring and not so cool, it's so much better to stay with those kind of friends because they're just looking out for you.
Absolutely. So, did you grow up seeing addiction in your family? Did your parents, either one, have alcohol issues, drug issues, anything like that?
My mom, no. She, of course, back in her time, it was normal. Both parents usually drinks. My mom, though, definitely not. She was not an alcoholic nor a drug addict. My dad, he became an alcoholic after he got back from Nam. So my mom actually helped him get clean. He occasionally drank, his beer when he's mowing the yard and stuff. But I personally don't ever remember seeing him fly off the handle, as some would say. That was all done before I was born, I believe. But I am the first known, I guess, drug addict in the family that actually came out anyways.
So, Trish, you said you were about 12 when you first began drinking alcohol. And then what age would you say that you were when you began using other things like marijuana and even harder drugs?
Weed, I probably started smoking about 15. It was easier for me to get when I turned 16 because I was driving and I knew so many people that sold it or grew it. Pills, about the same time usually. We did all of it. So we would drink, smoke, pop a couple pills here and there. The first hard addiction I had was with oxys. I want to say a sophomore when it got really bad. It got to the point where if I didn't have it, I got really mean. Actually, I kind of started getting violent towards my mom. Luckily, my brother was there the one time. He actually had to step in between us. And of course, nobody really knew about addiction yet. So I got sent to my dad's. Dad didn't know nothing about it. They really didn't know what I was completely on. So for them to try to help me get clean and try to get off of it, he actually worked me from sun up to sundown, thinking that was going to fix the problem, and all it did was actually put me in the hospital. Yeah, I always, I guess, was in denial about the whole addiction part, but no sooner I got back to my mom's, I went right back to it.
So, while you were at your dad's, you weren't using drugs?
No, I still found a way to get like perks or Vicodins. Of course, I wasn't on oxys then, but there was always some kind of form. Even though he lived in PA, I always had a way to get them.
How do you always have a way, just because of the people you knew?
People I knew, if I knew we were going somewhere, they would meet me. They would bring them to my dad's. And again, this all goes with the friends you hang with. Like, these were supposed to be my good friends, and it wasn't. It was just, if I got pills, they were able to get their pills for free. It always worked in a cycle.
Yeah. So, a lot of people say that marijuana is the gateway to harder drugs. Do you agree with that?
Most are probably not going to like this. No, I do not believe that. I believe it's truly who you hang out with. Because even when I got clean and stuff, and I got out of the sober livings, and I was never, once I got off the pills, I never really went back to the pills. So when I started getting prescribed all these pills for depression, anxiety, for sleeps, PTSD, I slowly got myself off of them because even being sober, I was a zombie. Like, I worked and I slept. That's all I did. So I slowly got off of it, and the way I went through, because you even get withdrawals on those kind of meds.
Mm-hmm.
So I used the vape pen and it helped me. And it didn't make me think, oh, I want to go do my drug of choice, which was heroin. So I truly believe it's the people you surround yourself with.
Do you think that what made heroin your drug of choice? Was it a
I was never really an upper, so I had a problem with coke after I had my daughter, and it was so bad. Like I legitimately only weighed maybe 70 pounds,
oh my
like 3
goodness?
months after she was born, and I was stealing from my mom, my stepdad, just to supply that habit, and then my friend also would buy it, so that part wasn't so bad to come off of because they say it's easier to come off uppers. It's more just like an attitude adjustment. Your eating habits are different. But as a downer, you truly don't feel nothing.
Mm-hmm.
Like it's a complete numbing sensation. It's a whole different life.
For people like me that have never used any kinds of drugs, and it's hard for my brain to imagine what it would feel like to be on heroin, where you get to the point to where you crave that drug so much that you're willing to do whatever it takes to get it. What is, can you tell the listeners what it feels like? Like, what is the drive to get it? What is it? Just an amazing high, that an experience that you've never had before?
I didn't start doing heroin until I was 22.
Okay.
The only reason I even started trying it because that's when the oxys at the time, as most recoveries are going to know, that's when they were selling for $1 a milligram. So for an 80, it was $80 to $100. So that's when heroin came around, and it was the exact same buzz as the oxy, only it was a lot cheaper. So I wanted to know what it was all about. Again, curiosity. And at the time, me and my partner, and I'm trying to be very cautious, not using names, we actually started selling it for somebody. So we already had it in our apartment building for about a month and a half before we even attempted to try it. And snorting it, it it's kind of gross because everyone said how the street name used to be dog food. Well, when you snorted it and you got that drip, it smelled, it tasted just like when you would open a bag of dog food.
Mm.
Like it was a disgusting taste, but the sensation you would get from it was instant numbing.
Mm-hmm.
So when we ran out and we were waiting to re up, our neighbor was trying to sell also at the time. She had some, and she said, well, I won't give it to you unless you do it the right way. So, in that perspective, it was to shoot it. So that's when we became IV users, and it took 5 hours for us to finally say, yes, we'll do it, just so we would get unsick. And the rush. So for most people who are IV users and stuff, they're going to understand when I say it was a freight train rush. Instant ringing, your body goes numb. As sad as it was probably the best feeling when you were high. But looking back, of course, it actually makes me sick thinking of it.
Now, the just real quick, Trish, the different drugs that you used and you ended up with the heroin, was that because those other drugs didn't provide the numbing sensation anymore? So did your body build up like a tolerance?
There was just something about heroin. It was a whole different feeling. Like, I don't know if it's when my parents separated, the whole mine was all about numbing. So all the other pills didn't numb me the way that heroin did. I didn't feel nothing. I didn't care when I was doing heroin. I didn't care who was around me, who hurt me, sadly, it got to the point where I didn't even care what happened to me. So, like, it just numbed everything.
Well, you had to be hurting pretty bad to choose numbing every feeling that you had versus facing those feelings.
I think I just got so used to numbing them that I didn't know how to deal with life.
Yeah, that makes sense. So you said that you started drinking at 12 and doing some marijuana. At what point and at what age would you say that you looked in the mirror at yourself one day and said, wow, I have a problem?
I didn't actually start thinking that until I actually got sober this last time. Like, I have been in and out of treatment centers, I've been in and out of jail, even went to prison. I never liked who I was, even doing the drug. But to actually say enough was enough, I was 36 years old. I'm 40 now. Like, my whole life, I just never liked who I was. It's just, I don't know why I don't. Like I said, my parents were loving parents. They tried to do everything they could for us, but there was something missing inside of me.
So you think all the way up till this last time, which was when you were 36, you say?
Yeah.
That you were in denial pretty much about really having a problem, and maybe the denial was based on the fact that you weren't really sober enough to really face the reality that you were an addict.
Once you become an addict, you kind of just lose the denial part. Your body just needs it to survive for that day. Like, you wake up, your body's in pain, you're sick to your stomach, it's like I try to explain it to people who don't know how. It's almost like the flu times 100. That's how your body aches. It, like, you just want to die.
So your body's aching for that next fix.
Yes.
That was my next question: is what it feels like when you need a new fix. And so you just answered my next question. And I can't imagine, because when I have the flu, it's pretty bad times 100.
Yeah.
That's got to be very horrible. And I can see why people do go and do whatever necessary in order to get that next fix, because that has to be a really horrible feeling to have to deal with. And not only are you dealing with that, but as you said, you were hurting and your emotions, you didn't want to feel anything with your emotions. So you got a double whammy. Your body's in pain and your heart's in pain. And so
Maybe not the heart is as much in pain, as she's saying, as you're just trying to survive now, because you need that in your body to even survive.
And
Because
it's
you want to avoid the pain physically,
Right.
maybe as much as what began everything
Right.
mentally.
and it's hard because for most of us, we have kids, we have family that love us unconditionally, who would do anything to be there, and we don't even see that while we're using. Like, for me, I knew my kids were content. So when I was 22, I got raided. I think if they wouldn't have took my kids from me, and they would have gave them back to me after I did my little bit of treatment, since it was still fresh, and I'm not saying I could have had it then, but I think them taking my kids and me coming back to my empty apartment, there was no sign of the kids. My other person was gone. So I come home to this empty apartment. So of course I'm going to end up relapsing. Luckily, my mom took my kids. She has raised them wonderfully. I actually would not know where I would be without my mom. But it got to the point where I knew they were taken care of. So whatever happened to me happened to me.
So looking back now, and this is probably a hard question to answer, do you have a lot of regrets with the what you've missed out?
Every day. Every day. I am blessed that they are in my life now. They always say that parents and kids shouldn't be friends, but it's different when you haven't been around. So I'm blessed to say that my kids are truly my best friends. I talk to my daughter on a daily basis. Even she tells me, like, I am her best friend, because her legit best friend's in college. So, like, it's always just been us.
Well, that's good. I mean, that you have a friendship with your kids now, and they're still young enough where you still have a whole future to look forward to. And one day they'll have kids, and you'll be a grandma and be able to be a part of their lives. So there's a lot of good to be sought after, from all that heartache. There's always a good, and there's light at that end of that tunnel for sure. So my next question is, speaking about family, when your mom finally realized that you were an addict, what was her response? Was she in denial as well, or was she?
At first, she was in denial because I don't think she ever thought that it would ever hit our family like it did. When I first became an IV user, I tried to give her like signs. I guess it was my way of trying to reach out saying, hey, I need help, but I didn't know how to actually say it because to my mom, like, if you did it, you should be able to overcome it. But with being an addict, there's no way of doing that without the right help. So I would show her like the track marks. At the time, it would be just like black and blue marks. But she stayed in, I don't want to really say denial. I just don't think she wanted to admit that one of her children was, I guess you could say, as messed up as they were. Because my brother never had a problem. So I think she was just hurt and disappointed at least.
So did she, when you would show her the marks and stuff, did she just pretend as if she didn't see them, or did she respond in any way?
I'll be honest, I don't really remember what she actually said when I first started showing her. So all kids know how to get to their parents. If you nag them enough, if you fight with them enough, they're
Gonna give in.
they're going to give in to regardless whatever you're asking them for. So that is what I used to do to my mom. This is another touchy subject for me. My mom and my kids will always be the touchy subjects in this whole journey. So the 1 year I did that to her so much that I don't even know why she would support me like she does to this day. I got her for a whole bunch of money. I made up lies about how I was sick just so she would give me money. So it got to the point where she knew something wasn't right. I hadn't been to jail yet. So all this was happening, and she's also trying to take care of my kids. So it got to the point where I went over there one day and I was trying to get money. When she would try to tell me no, I would always find a way. Like, I stole from my kids. I stole from my mom right under their noses. She would try to let me stay the night and stuff just so she knew where I was, and I'm stealing from them. There's times me and the kids will talk about it and bring up stuff now. They really try not to because they see how hard I've worked to be who I am, and they know that wasn't me, but it's still very heartbreaking, the things that they remember, and I'm thinking that they don't remember. But I always said it's the little things. It's the little things that mean the most, and it's also the little things that hurt the most.
And I think the reason that your mom and your kids are your touchy spots is because of the deep, deep love that you have for them. And that's proof. I mean, if any of them ever doubted that, all they'd have to do is see your heart when you speak of those things and see the hurt in your eyes and know that it's because of the deep love that you have for them is exactly the reason that it is a very touchy subject for you. So we'll get off of that subject. And the next thing you talked about how you were in prison. How long did you go to prison? And was it all drug related?
So, yes, I'm sure some people have looked me up. If you look me up, most of mine are drug possessions, drug paraphernalia. I do have a couple bad charges, and it was so other people would have got out of what the cops already knew of them. But that's like a whole different subject. The prison thing. So when we had first spoke about this, I lucked out. I only did like a month and a half literally in prison. The only reason I got out of all my time When I went in front of the judge the first time, they were trying to send me to NeoCap. NeoCap is a prison-based rehab for most people that know of NeoCap. So I automatically said no, absolutely not, because I was just the type of person, if the courts or probation officers were trying to tell me I need to get clean, I'm not getting clean. I don't want to get clean. Like, I had no desire whatsoever to get clean. So when I told the judge, no, absolutely not, I'll take my time, the look that this judge had on his face, because I didn't really know how much time I was looking for. Plus, I had another charge pending with another judge. And I had already been in this judge previous. Actually, the first time I ever got into trouble was with this judge. And when he took his glasses off and he said, I advise you to change your answer, he said, because you are facing 6 to 8 years. Ooh. Right off rip. So wow. When I looked at him and I'm like, this is the first time ever I ever went to prison. And I was going to do all the time minus maybe 2-3 months that I've already did in county. I said, absolutely, I will take NeoCap. So I ended up only doing 6 months in NeoCap. So by the time I did NeoCap, and then, of course, as soon as I get out of NeoCap, not even a week later, I was arrested again because I had a warrant out. I was always running. So by the time I did all of my little time in county and stuff, I only had like a month and a half to do in prison. So I lucked out on that.
Mm-hmm. I feel like, and you can correct me if I'm wrong because you know way more than I do about this, but it seems to me that they put people that have addictions in jail and they don't give them the proper counseling or rehab, and then basically they just put them in there for a short time, they get out and they reuse again. Like, couldn't there be a better way where you have to go into like teen challenge or something for a year, and literally instead of masking the problem with jail, how about getting to the source of the problem? Do you think that would have helped you, or do you think it would have not made a difference for you?
So it's funny you said that, because that was a lot of our arguments with our probation officers and stuff when we were always going in and out because of violations. And so my biggest thing and it seemed like I would always get like the head person, like the main probation officer, no matter what I have done. I always had the main one. So I always used to tease them saying like, we're going to be friends by the time I'm done with this, which I literally am friends with every probation officer I have ever had. Mm-hmm. And even with all the violations and stuff that I have caused and them chasing me, and they actually have it now where if you violate, they are putting you in little groups, programs. They're all based off of like the NeoCap setting, but they're not sending violators right back into jail. Because my biggest thing is, you're sending us to jail. Half of us are dealers, the other half of us are addicts. So all you're doing is giving new clientele and new ways to find it. Mm-hmm. So you're not helping nothing, because as soon as we get back on the streets, we got new numbers.
Mm. So you said some of us, including yourself, were dealers. Did you become a dealer as well?
I did. I used to run a house. I'm definitely not proud of anything I have done, because all I did was add to the situation. And a lot of these girls that I am still friends with and stuff, and I love full-heartedly, like, I am so proud of each and every one of us, and they all know who I'm speaking about. We have came such a long way, and all I did was add to their problems when I was in the mix of running the house, or because of who I knew. And it's just very hard, and I hope they all know how sorry I am, because and I know they do, because they know none of all that was any of us. That was a whole separate person than any of us are today.
Right. So my next question would be, when you did say to yourself, okay, you acknowledged you had a problem, and you probably went a little bit longer continuing knowing that you had a problem. But at what point did you say, enough is enough? I want to end this lifestyle and I want to get clean? Like, what did it take? Did it take extreme things out on the streets to get you to that point, do you think?
I have, from my personal experience, I have definitely been through a lot in the streets. I trusted people who I thought would always have my back, and all they did was actually set me up. One had me almost killed when I got home from prison by giving me bad stuff and then having somebody follow me to my room. And I'll be honest, I have no idea what they had did to me that night. All I know is when I woke up the next day, the way my face looked, the way my body felt, the marks that I had on me. I don't know how I survived, but after seeing some of their faces when I came back to the house, I already assumed that they're the ones that had did it, because they were very shocked to see me even walk through that door. But I have been kidnapped, I've been raped, I have been held against my will. I have jumped from moving vehicles, trying to get away from people. Everything that I have been through, I wouldn't wish on my worst enemy. I try my hardest to this day to not judge people, I try to not use the word hate, because after everything I have been through, it's very hard for me to hate something. Things I have been through, I absolutely despise, because no human being should ever go through the things that I personally went through. And I know some of the other girls have went through the same thing.
Yeah, it's very unfortunate that you had to go through all of that, and I'm sorry to hear that, and I'm sorry for the pain that you had to endure. And were there times that you actually, periods of time that you lived on the streets?
I lived on the street for 3 years. I lived behind buildings, under bridges. I'm actually from where most people would know as Area 51 in Warren. It was one of the hardest areas at that time. There was only a few of us that were actually out there. I found an abando. I lived there for a few months. I used to steal tea light candles from dollar stores to stay warm in the winter. I truly don't know how I survived the way I did. There would be weeks on weeks I wouldn't eat because all I cared about was getting that next fix. If I did, it was ice cream or just something that was on my system, but it was never enough that a normal person could live off of.
It doesn't sound like you should be here today with all the things that you went through, but I can tell you this. There's a reason you're here. Like, God saved your life for a reason. And you should be thankful every day, which I'm sure you are, that God did give you grace and mercy during that time. And wow, the things that you went through, that you're still here. You're a miracle. You truly are.
I truly, truly thank God, my higher power. I always said it was my dad for being here, because I had overdosed multiple times without people around, because I was one of those ones where I would take my stuff and go to my little hiding spots. Only few people would know where my hiding spots were. But a lot of times, more I sit and think back on stuff, I had overdosed a lot of times on my own.
Did you ever flatline?
Yes.
How many times do you think that happened?
Probably between 5 and 10. I know a couple times the ambulances, when I was fortunate enough and somebody called, they brought me back a few times. I remember no sooner getting to the hospital, and I was worried about getting charged, and I hurried up and ripped all the IVs off and stumbled out of there.
So when you did decide to get clean, did you, as soon as you decided to get clean and you started, getting therapy or whatever, however you went about getting it, did you ever relapse?
Previous times, yes. When I got clean this time, I was tired. So I had just got out of jail. I had did like through 4 months, almost 5 months in the county again. I got out. My really, really good friend, who's also in recovery, he had been trying to help me get clean for many years. He is pretty much like a brother in my life, and I'm sure he's listening to this. So he helped me tremendously. He got me a place out of Warren. He told me if I was really serious, he would help me in every way he could. I stayed at the hotel for a few weeks, and I was doing very little just so I wouldn't be sick or had to go walk the streets anymore. And then I got the phone number to New Day and set up that stuff. I went to detox and never looked back.
And the reason I ask you if you relapse is just for anybody listening, if they have thought, you know what, I don't want this lifestyle anymore and I'm going to turn from this, but then they ended up relapsing, it doesn't mean that it's over for you.
It's not. I probably relapsed a dozen or more times. I think that I'd get it. I almost had 4 years clean before my dad passed away. After he passed, I went hard for another 8-9 years before I got clean again.
Goodness.
Because,
You wanted to numb yourself again.
yeah, I didn't know what else to do. At that time, my mom was very hard to talk to about anything drug related. Now, she's a whole different person now when we start talking about it. Like, she's understanding. I don't want to say compassionate, because anyone that knows my mom knows that she's not very compassionate when it comes to this. She's still very stuck in her ways, and I am thankful for that, because even though me and her may not see eye to eye, we still see each other's opinions a lot differently than what we used to.
Well, I think it's probably hard for her to talk about it because she probably relives the hurt that was associated with all those times. And that's very understandable why she would feel that way. So if you could talk to 12-year-old Trish, what would you tell her?
Don't do it. Stay with the people that matter the most. Just because it might not go with your style at the time, nobody's style is supposed to match up. It's actually the different styles that actually get along better. Like, me and my friends now are completely and utterly opposite of each other, and we are the bestest friends. Mm-hmm. Even my husband's my best friend, and we are completely opposite. And we have the most fun together. Anyone that knows me and sees the videos and stuff, like, we are generally in love. And don't do drugs just because of a guy or you want to be with that person, because that was also a part of my problem. Like, I always wanted to feel loved, but I was feeling it the wrong way.
Yes.
Like, what me and him have now is actually true. It's sincere. It's very compassionate, where I don't have to, like, force being loved or force trying to feel loved. Mm-hmm. He just gives it.
I watch your videos and I always get a big smile on my face, and I have even remarked, and I showed my friend, I was like, look how much fun they have. And I love the fact that he's able to provide that for you, and you're able to, in return, provide that to him, and the laughs that you guys have and the love that you guys share. I'm glad that you have such a great supporter. So what if there was somebody listening that is currently struggling with a drug addiction, and they say to themselves, you know what, that's great that you did that, and kudos to you, but I would never be able to get clean. What would your advice be to them?
First thing I would say, never say never. Mm-hmm. Every time I ever said never, I ended up doing it anyways. I really hope people don't ever think and feel that way, though. That is probably the hardest thing, because it's scary. But just like they say in the rooms and everywhere you go, that's treatment, to go through this you have to be uncomfortable. If you are comfortable, you're going to get complacent. When you get complacent, you're just going to go right back to your old ways. So my biggest thing about this podcast was I'm very uncomfortable doing this. But at the same time, this is exactly what I need to do to continue with my recovery, because my recovery is very different than most. And I say this very strongly because the people that know me know I rarely go to meetings. I have never completely did all my steps all the way through. And those are something that I don't want to say you have to do, because for some reason it worked for me. Life kind of took over for me. I'm very active. I try to stay active so I don't get bored, because when I get bored, my mind starts wandering. And then I don't ever have urges like I used to. I don't ever think of going back. But when I get bored, I start getting depressed and I get stuck. So if you stay with a sponsor, you do your meetings, you do your steps, that will help you for a more successful recovery and journey. Again, it's not for everybody. It was not for me. I'm very rare, I guess you could say, but I have a very great support system. I do still talk to a lot of the women in meetings. Once in a while, I do still go to a women's meeting, but you have to keep yourself surrounded by support in recovery, though.
And I think you're talking about you can't get bored because your mind wanders. And I think that is true with anybody in general. I think that idle time is dangerous time. Idle time in our brains is a time for the devil to have a party where he can put negative thoughts in your mind and he can try to destroy you in any way that he can. And so I think being an addict or not being an addict, you should keep yourself busy with good thoughts, positive things. Like for me, I watch lots of Christian preachers that are helping me in different areas I might be struggling in. Listening to great praise and worship music, things like that, that keeps your mind focused on good things, because any of us, I don't care who you are, can go down a road. And anybody out there that is listening that is judgmental, be careful, because you never know when something like this can be a part of your family, and one of you, the people that you love dearly, may fall into the trap of addiction. And you would want others to have that compassion and empathy for them as you should have for others. And it's very easy, I think, for people to judge people, and especially if you've never dealt with something, it's easy for you to say, how'd you ever get yourself into this mess, or why would you ever do that? And I found myself doing that before in my life, and God's really corrected me in those areas where I'd like to say that I've really tried to not be judgmental and try to look at things from a different perspective and try to put myself in somebody else's shoes, because I think I do have a lot of compassion and empathy. And I don't think a lot of people are. I think some people have to try to be compassionate and empathetic, and some people, it's just a gift that they have. They were just born to be compassionate and empathetic. And even though I am a compassionate and empathetic person, I did struggle with different things where I would judge different lifestyles and different things. And I think a lot of times life will smack you in the face, and you might make some wrong choices, and then you're going to think to yourself, wow, I guess I can fall into that same trap that they did. So just be careful judging people. And instead of maybe thinking about what they shouldn't have done, maybe instead of being judgmental, when we meet people that we want to judge, how about if we pray for them instead, and pray for their problem and pray for God to deliver them from whatever their problems may be? But is there anything else that you'd like to add that maybe we didn't discuss that you think is important for people to know?
No, I think we pretty much hit everything that.
And if you had to tell, if there's somebody out there that's contemplating their first time using a drug because they're peer pressure, or maybe they're like you, they're hurting so bad and they're like, I just cannot feel this hurt. I just need to numb myself. I need to numb this pain. I can't face this anymore. What would your advice be to them?
Go talk to somebody. Don't just turn to drugs. There are people everywhere. Like I said, there are meetings everywhere. There's counselors. Even a friend. Like, like you just said, you never know what people are going through, especially within their own family, friends. Sadly, this is everywhere. So it's hitting more and more people.
Yes, people, there's hurting people. That's why I'm doing this podcast. Everybody's hurting in some way. And it's my goal to maybe be some kind of an integral role in helping them know that they don't have to live in heartbreak. And even though we are going to have heartbreak and we might have breaks here and there from different heartbreaks, part of life is heartbreaks and hurt. We all go through it, unfortunately. And what you might go through and the hurts you have might look different than what I go through, but it doesn't make it any less of a hurt for either one of us. And so it's my goal to just help people to know that there is a light at the end of the tunnel. And for me, my advice would be seek after God, because from my personal experience, anytime I've gone through difficulties, and my difficulties don't look like yours, Trish, but I haven't had like an easy road. I've dealt with so many hurts in my life. And the only reason I think I'm standing here, and didn't turn to drugs, because I could have very easily done that, or alcohol. Alcoholism runs in my family. My dad was an alcoholic, but I was raised in church, and I always relied on God. And if it wasn't for that, my relationship with God, I don't know where I would be, honestly. I honestly don't know. I could have been right next to you on the streets. And so I would encourage anybody that is hurting or going through difficult things and you feel hopeless, there's always hope. There's always hope, especially when you have Jesus in your heart and Jesus on your side. Our church, Grace Fellowship Church, has a
Celebrate Recovery.
Celebrate Recovery.
It's amazing.
It is so good. Trish has been to it, and I have been to it, and it is phenomenal. And I think the reason it has such an impact is because the people that are at those events, they have been at rock bottom, and they have come out of that, and they are just so thankful to be alive and to be where they are, and there's just have grateful hearts. And so if you, Friday nights at 6, I believe it is, they have Grace Fellowship Church, they have Celebrate Recovery, and it is amazing. Also, anybody considering going to Celebrate Recovery at Grace, it's important to remember it's not just for drug addicts or alcoholics. It's for any kind of problem you might have. It's for depression, any kind of addiction that you are facing. So anybody's welcome, and I would encourage you to check it out. We're about ready to close. Does anybody else have anything that they'd like to say in closing?
Sure. I'd like to say one thing. When I listen to the stories that she's went through, I think about, it went from masking pain then to ultimately survival because of how strong those drugs are. And they just kind of take your life away from you, where you're just trying to get that drug in your body to survive, because now it's physical, not just mental, that you're dealing with. And I'd advise anybody thinking whether you're being influenced to mask pain or you're thinking from the standpoint of my friends are doing it, I want to fit in, whatever it may be, as Trish said earlier, don't do it, right? Go to God, go to a friend, go seek some help with dealing with it, and don't give in to that, because you will destroy your life. I think Trish is lucky to be here. She's got a future ahead of her. We're thankful that God has allowed her that, because most people don't make it. Most people die at a younger age because of the addictions. And it doesn't have to be that way. You can make different decisions, but don't just give in to that, because once you do, you're basically in a trap and you're controlled. And to break that control is virtually impossible. So don't even succumb to it. Stay away from it. That's all I wanted to say.
Yeah, and in him saying that, I just want you to know, Trish, that you're amazing and your story is amazing. And I'm so thankful that you came and that you were vulnerable with yourself and with listeners. And that I pray that this is healing to your heart as well. And I know it's going to help so many people. And that's really a selfless act, to be able to put yourself out there and talk about things that aren't easy to talk about and that's not comfortable to talk about. But sometimes we have to get uncomfortable in order to help others. And that's exactly what you did. And I'm proud of you. I really am. And I am so thankful that you got clean. And I just wish you the best in your future. And I know God has big plans for you. And there is a reason that you're here. And you need to find out what that reason is. And you need to go after it, because apparently you are a strong, strong woman that can conquer anything. Anything you put your mind to, you can do it. I mean, you have done what most women or men just can't do, overcome this. And so you should be proud of yourself, and you should find out what God has for you, and you better go after it, because I know whatever you choose to do, whatever he chooses for you, you will succeed at that.
Thank you. I appreciate that. I'm still trying to find my ways here and there.
And I think we all are. I mean, we're all just kind of on this journey and kind of just waiting for God to give us direction. And sometimes we get off track and we get sidetracked, but you know what? He always gets us back on track. When we ask him for help, he's always there available to us and for us. So thank you so much. I appreciate you coming tonight and sharing your story.
You're welcome. Thanks for having me and getting me out of my comfort zone.
Yes, for sure. One last thing before we close. I don't know if any of you have heard of his daughter in Middlefield, Ohio. They're having their spring open house Friday, May 10th from 10 to 6 and Saturday, May 11th from 10 to 4. If you like organic, natural soaps and lotions, they have all kinds of good stuff there that I absolutely love. And I would encourage you to get out there and check it out. And if you can't get out there, they also have a website, hisdaughtershop.com. And I use all their cleaning supplies and their bath and shower products, and they're amazing. So I would encourage you to do that. Also, if you love coffee, which everybody does, Third Day Coffee is the best coffee that you would ever drink. So go to the website, www.thirddaycoffee.com, and you will not be disappointed. It is amazing. So in saying all of that lightened the mood a little bit. We're just going to go ahead and close now. And I just want to encourage everybody to know that we all have hurts and we all have pains in life, but try to keep smiling through the tears and know that God has always got your back. Thank you so much for supporting us. Thank you for listening. And don't forget to hit the subscribe button so you'll get notified when each one of our podcasts come out. Thank you and have a great night.